forged on the gridiron in September. Perfected in the magic of March. For the fans who love the crunch of the pads, prefer a dunk, and expect nothing but the best. It's Bigger Ten. Here's Steve Dace.
Greetings. Welcome to this week's episode of Bigger Ten. I am Steve Dace alongside my co-host, Aaron McIntyre, as we continue to fight on here, fighting harder for Big Ten football than the Big Ten is. Aaron, how are you, man?
I'm doing all right, all things considered. We should be getting, the butterflies in the stomach. I don't know if you still get them, even, 20 years older than I am. Butterflies in your stomach 2 weeks before the season starts. I always get those because the possibilities are endless. Don't have those this year. I just have a sinking pit of despair, and I'm just trying to smile through the pain.
It's still surreal to me that this is going on.
No kidding.
And as the days go on, it just gets dumber and worse, which just makes it all the more surreal, right? So let's begin there with our Big Five this week on Bigger Ten. And if this was an attempt at a clarification, it was a very piss-poor one. Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren issued an open letter to the Big Ten community last week where he didn't have any specifics other than he literally went on the Worldometer Johns Hopkins site and posted worldwide data on the virus that has literally nothing to do with the Big Ten footprint. Because,
point of clarification while we're on clarification here.
Yes.
Can you quantify what continue to rise at an alarming rate means?
It just means whatever we want it to mean. In fact, cases in America have been on the decline for the last 5 weeks. Daily new cases have been 5 weeks in a row.
Alarming rate.
Right now in America, 1.9%, according to CDC, 1.9% of all ER visits in America, that's it, 1.9%, are for COVID-like symptoms, which means 98.1% of ER visits in America are for something else. According to CDC, we have our lowest hospitalizations for COVID symptoms since March 21st. Since March 21st. The CDC has lifted the quarantine on Americans who travel abroad and then come back home. You no longer have to quarantine to do that. The CDC is no longer even advising testing asymptomatic people, even if they think they've come into contact with somebody with COVID. We went through all of the epidemiological curves of the entire Big Ten Conference a week ago. I have no idea what he's talking about, and neither does he, which is why the heat on Kevin Warren has only grown since our last episode. Your thoughts on this clarification, or whatever the hell this was, Aaron?
I think this was oh crap, there's a bunch of parents that are coming to my doorstep. I'm going to try to get out ahead of this so they don't do this and create a photo op that will boomerang on me when these players organize.
That's it.
That's it.
That's pretty much it. Totally agree. More on Kevin Warren here in item number 2 here on this week's Big Five, according to the Bigger Ten. This is an article from 24/7 Sports talking about an interview that Bill Moose gave, the Nebraska AD, to the Omaha World Herald, where he talked about the interactions behind the scenes leading up to the Big Ten's cancellation, and essentially says all the ADs were united. He mentioned Nebraska, Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Ohio State pushing the hardest for a football season this fall. But all the ADs were united in wanting to play, but that Kevin Warren never really actually consulted the athletic directors whatsoever, never got the ADs and the medical people in a room together, and just kind of went it alone with the school presidents, despite being a rookie commissioner facing the toughest decision he's likely ever going to face, whether he's commissioner for another 5 months, another 5 minutes, or another 5 years. Your thoughts on that revelation, which shouldn't shock anybody, but nevertheless pisses you off.
Yeah, if the year were 2017 or 2019 or 2021 or 2023 or 2025, do you think that would have happened? Probably not. Probably not. You know, the last president of the University of Iowa, and I bring Iowa up a lot because I still do have a soft spot for the Hawkeyes in my heart, even though they're not going to be playing, it sounds like, this fall. The former president of Iowa before their current one, Bruce Harold, who seems like he has a little bit more of an inkling about sports and athletics at the college level than some school presidents do. Sally Mason, I believe, was her name prior to Bruce Harold. She was notorious for having a attitude when it came to athletics. That's like a separate world. It's like a separate world, like a separate silo to whatever. I believe she's probably more indicative of most college presidents. Most college presidents
in our league, that's true.
In our league, than Bruce.
And that's probably true in the Pac-12 as well.
And so consulting these school presidents, you would only do that for a few reasons. None of them have to do with whether or not it's safety or athletic or what's best for the student athletes. There's a few reasons, only a few reasons why you would only consult with the school presidents. None of them have to do with anything pertaining to the actual playing of football or dealing with student athletes.
Yeah, I can think of two off the top of my head. Number one, you came in here, I'm from the NFL, smartest guy in the room disease. I don't need to consult with you ADs. What the hell do you know? I got this, and you got rolled by the presidents. That's option one. That could have happened. Or option two, which is, I know that I'm essentially paid by the president, selected by them. I am their mouthpiece. I'm their worm tongue. I'm their proxy. And so I'm just going to do whatever they say anyway. So there's no point in continuing the charade that UADs have a voice. You don't. I'm a tool of the university presidents. Either one of those two things does not speak well in terms of the longevity and future of one Kevin Warren. Neither does this next event we're going to talk about. Because I'm sure this won't get used against us in recruiting at all. About 30 parents of several Big Ten schools, particularly Iowa and Ohio State, were the most heavily represented. In front of the Big Ten league offices, tons of media there to cover. Might have been more media there than actual parents, demanding for answers to find out why their child is not going to be able to play college football in the Big Ten this fall, demanding a dialogue, and getting neither from Kevin Warren. Aaron, this is a photo op only the SEC could love.
I just want to ask one totally non-divisive question that I could totally ask in any other conversation, in any other context, in any other protest whatsoever, and that is this. What were these parents hoping to accomplish, Steve? Except that was asked by one Dan Wolken. Wonder what other types
otherwise known as the worst sports writer in America.
I wonder what other types of protests he would have said that about. I'll wait. This is there were probably more media than parents. That's still a terrible look, guys. I as far as people who are willing to drive, to put in the time, to travel to a state like Illinois, who still has some of the worst measures to contain the virus of any state out there right now, to put on all that time and effort, and you still got 30 parents to show up? That's I think, far more indicative of the level of disgust and ire that's out there amongst the rest of the Big Ten as anything is. That's still a terrible look. Terrible look.
There's no question.
If you're Kevin Warren in the Big Ten as well. Just absolutely pathetic. And it all could have been avoided. Just handle this better. We're not even coming from the same place when it comes to this virus as Kevin Warren, the school presidents are. Of course we're not. You know that. But even we could have come up with better ways to handle this than they did. From their perspective, that's how bad this is. And it results in equally bad optics, which is what we saw for the Big Ten parents last week.
Let's do this. Let's talk some actual ball. Because I do think the pressure on the Big Ten to put on some kind of a football season early next semester is ginormous and only going to grow, okay? And over at the University of Illinois' Sports Illustrated site, they put together what a potential winter football schedule could look like for the Big Ten. And I got to, looking at this, as a Michigan fan, I can point out, oh, great. So Ohio State gets a bye before they play us like they need any other advantages. And then I realized, well, we're playing Rutgers the week before. So that basically is also a bye. Looking at this, though, I kind of think they did a great job with this. Every team plays 8 games. So you start in early January. It ends the 1st of March, right around the time we'd be reporting for spring practice. So no spring practice. You take the entire rest of the time off, and we see you in June when you start up with your conditioning with your strength and conditioning coaches. So that's 4 full months off. This would be in place of winter conditioning, obviously, because you're playing a season, and no spring football. It's basically the same time commitment that players are already making every season anyway, and they get plenty of time for rest and recovery. I think they did an excellent job with this. Aaron, what are your thoughts?
Absolutely. You know why? Because it's actually a plan, Steve.
Yeah.
Which is,
are you saying the Illinois affiliate for Sports Illustrated has put more work into this than the Big Ten has so far?
I didn't say that out loud. Oh yeah, I did actually say that out loud. Yeah, because it's actually a plan. Stop jerking these athletes around. I mean, seriously. It's one thing when you have to leave early during spring practice. We were still relatively early on in the pandemic. That can even be forgiven. I don't agree with it, but it can be understood at least. Now though, during the summer months, my goodness, you bring them back, you bring them all back. You start practicing, you start weightlifting, you put this entire intrusive system into place, and they still abide with that. And
they're still abiding with it.
And they're still abiding with it.
Penn State, Michigan State are still reporting 0 positives as of this week.
Coaches and staffs and players are doing everything you asked them. You release one schedule, which you knew you were never going to play, and then promptly 5 days later, for no reason whatsoever, you cancel the season. And then like a week and a half later, you put on this dog and pony show that we talked about earlier. It's just... And you allow them to keep practicing even though you're concerned about health and safety. That makes no sense whatsoever. Makes no sense whatsoever. Here's the harsh reality about this. And I know this is easy for me to say because I don't have loyalty to certain coaches and things of that nature, the same kind of loyalty that players have probably developed at some levels. If I were a Big Ten student athlete right now, get the heck out of here. Because no matter what they put out next, no matter what plan they put out next, Steve, do you believe that they're actually going to follow through and keep their word? Not for 1 second. Depending on the result of something that may or may not happen in November. But at this point, I would be incredibly dubious about any future plans or schedule that the Big Ten puts out there. Because right now, they have shown virtually no interest in playing football this calendar year, or really even next year. They've made ovations to it, but they have no interest in it. Why would you ever trust them at this point?
Well, because Allah hates us, the Associated Press's preseason top 25 came out this week, Aaron. And they still decided to include every team, including the ones that weren't going to play. Which means the Big Ten has 6 teams in the preseason AP Top 25. Ohio State leads the way, not surprisingly, at number 2. Penn State at number 7, which I wouldn't have them there without Micah Parsons, but that's where they come in the preseason. Wisconsin at 12, Michigan at 16, Minnesota at 19. I wouldn't have them there without Rashad Bateman. And your Iowa Hawkeyes at number 24, as the Associated Press decided to not just pour some salt in the wound, but battery acid. Your reaction to seeing the AP preseason top 25 include our league because the universe hates us?
I'm going to go eat some fish tank cleaner. I don't know. It's just...
Doesn't it just make you want to cut yourself like right now?
Yeah. I just...
I mean, I want to do self-harm like right now, watching that. That's what that does to you. Which is why I'm going to take a break. We're going to take a break right now. You and I are going to go do some self-harm and get patched up and come back and continue on here on a very broken and damaged edition of Bigger Ten.
Bigger Ten is brought to you by Michigan Podcast. If you like what you're hearing today and would like to support us, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/Michigan Podcast, where if you live somewhere where sports wagering is illegal, you can find Steve's picks for various games for just $5 a month. In the process, you can say thank you for creating this podcast on YouTube or via podcast, wherever you listen. Patreon.com/Michigan Podcast.
All right, we're bandaged back up, and now we're ready to continue on here on Bigger Ten with our weekly game of Would You Rather. So, Aaron, would you rather the Big Ten try to make winter/spring football work, or just shut it all down until next fall? What would you rather they do?
Well, I would rather they just come out this afternoon and say, okay, yeah, we're playing in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is. But if these are the only two options, and I'm taking this at face value, make winter or spring football work, preferably winter football. All right. So you have a little bit more time for the players to recover, of course. But I would say try to make winter football work. Save some type of face, because on the trajectory we're on, unless I've been kind of out of the loop this weekend, unless I'm missing something, Steve, it definitely seems like we're still on schedule for SEC, Big 12.
I think
ACC.
we're more on schedule than we've ever been.
Yeah.
I think what happened in North Carolina was another big turning point. When they sent the students home and kept the players in the bubble, and everybody was like, yeah, we should have probably just done this all along. Then I think now these schools feel as if it's perfectly safe to do that. And I think they're bound and determined to play, man. I do.
Yep. So I'd say save face as fast as you can. As much as I would like the schadenfreude or just the justice for being this stupid, if there's still an outside shot at saving some sort of reputation, you've got to do it. And I think once we get 1 week, maybe 2 weeks into the season, hey, we started playing football and the world didn't end.
Yeah.
Just like all of these other sports.
Hey, we had high school football all over the country last weekend.
Hey, the world didn't come to an end. We're not pulling body bags off the football field. I think you're going to see a lot more action, like actual action, not just, hey, we're going to put out a schedule and then 5 days later cancel the season type of action. Next one is for you. Would you rather be an FCS, MAC, or Mountain West football program, or be an owner of a hospitality business in a Big Ten college town right now?
I think I'd rather still be the owner of a hospitality business in the Big Ten right now, because I think my future earning potential is still better on however this all shakes out and what the new model looks like, the brave new world to come on the other side of this, than I'm in the FCS or the MAC. And at least I might be able to go out and get myself some kind of a bridge loan or something, based on past history and the hope of future performance when and if the Big Ten returns. But do you have any idea what FCS football is going to look like a year from now?
It's not.
Do you have any idea what? Yeah, it won't in a lot of places. I agree. Do you know what MAC football is going to look like a year from now? I mean, I think what you learn from the MAC, except for like a Boise State, this is true of everybody in the Mountain West in these leagues. And this is why the American Conference is doing everything it can to play right now, because it sees a chance for it to move up in the ecosystem. It's why the Sun Belt has kind of attached itself to the SEC, because without these big market games and these big conferences and the buy-ins to essentially go there and get paid to lose, they don't have huge television deals, man. And so they make their money off of these non-conference games where they get paid to go get mollywopped, basically. Take those games off the table. They don't have the resources to play football, let alone pay for all the testing and everything else that's demanded of you here in the coronavirus era. So I think all those situations you articulated are precarious, but I think the one that gives me the most sure footing of recovering faster is owning a hospitality business in the Big Ten, especially if they play in the winter. Could you see people, hey, you know what, man, I can't go to the game, but I want to get out of the house. It's wintertime in the Big Ten, so let's all get together at blank bar and watch the game, right?
Sure.
I could see that for sure. Especially, could you imagine some days in January where you've got Big Ten basketball and football doubleheaders? So just go there with your buddy to the sports bar and just hang out there with your buddies all day long, right? Like you would like a normal college football Saturday, except it's football and basketball. I think there's some of that kind of sounds like a good time, right?
Yep, that makes sense.
All right, this one is for you. Would you rather be Kevin Warren or Kathleen Kennedy Townsend? Who has better odds of still having their job next year? The woman who wrecked Star Wars or the guy who appears to have wrecked the Big Ten? What do you think?
Kathleen Kennedy Townsend is that woman from Massachusetts. So Kathleen Kennedy, I was confused because I was like,
did I give the wrong name?
Yeah, well, no, it's confusing because there's Kathleen Kennedy and there's Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, who's a politician. So I get them confused too.
Okay.
Sorry, I left you hanging out to dry there because I forgot about this one. But anywho, I'd still rather be Kevin Warren. The reasons why, for a different podcast. I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to say any more, Steve. I was dreading this one. But I would rather be Kevin Warren. Okay. Next up, would you rather have no Big Ten football this season at all if it meant getting the NCAA football video game back sooner? Or would you rather have Big Ten football back right away and wait a little longer for the game?
I'd rather have Big Ten football back right away, a little longer, wait a little longer for the game.
Because it's going to come at some point.
Yeah, and I've waited this many years at this point, right? So, no, these 12 Saturdays a year, and you know this, they're my vacation at my house. And I'm still going to get some of it in. I'm going to watch every game I can possibly watch.
Austin Peay versus Central Arkansas. I can't wait for that.
But it's just still not quite the same without our own league taking part, you know?
Yep.
So, I'd rather get Big Ten football back in the fall as soon as I possibly could. That'll do it for our weekly game of Big Ten Would You Rather. We'll come back with our Twitter poll results as well as our question of the week next. This week's Twitter poll results, we asked you, do you still believe the Big Ten will play football in the winter or spring of 2021? 81% said no. 19% said yes. I think the odds are very high they're going to play this winter, actually, because of the political pressure. But, Aaron, I can see where that skepticism comes from. It's certainly not unwarranted based on recent events.
Yeah, I totally agree. And peace in the Middle East, the Big Ten actually following through on a plan, I'm going to be very skeptical, and I'm going to claim honorary Missouri residence until I see it. You just got to show it to me. Yeah, you guys just got to show it to me. All
right, that brings us to this week's question of the week from Seth, who said, did you happen to see Pat Forty of Sports Illustrated on the Rich Eisen show? So disrespectful towards helicopter parents and players wanting to play. Just can't figure out why people are so mad. Must only be bad optics for Warren. No mention of Warren's son playing in the debunked medical study. I think you kind of learned who Pat Forty and some of these people's sources are. That they're basically mouthpieces for the Big Ten Conference. Now, are they mouthpieces because that's their sources, or are those their sources because they agree with them? Who knows? But I think you kind of learn that when Pat writes about the Big Ten, it's basically a missive from Kevin Warren's office. And here, I do think having Kevin Warren's son playing in the SEC is so incredibly bad optics. It's some of the worst political hypocrisy I have seen in my career. It's like breathtaking lack of self-awareness. To have your own son playing while the league you're in shuts down because it's not safe, but it's safe for your own son. It's so inexplicably bad. Just saying it without adding any further commentary is damaging and toxic enough.
May I interject something?
By all means, yes.
If you were placing odds, if you were an odds line originator for the following prop bet, we will see a photo of Kevin Warren in a suite at one of his son's games this college football season. Yes, no, what would you put the odds at?
I'd put the
yes at like plus 200.
You think it's overwhelmingly that we will?
No, plus 200, meaning it's probably more likely that we won't. But
we won't. Yeah.
But that it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Here's the thing. I would have never guessed in a million years they'd have put out a schedule only to then cancel the season in the same week. That's 2020, y'all. What would be the most 2020 outcome here? Kevin Warren in a skybox in Starkville, Mississippi, rooting for his son at Mississippi State and yucking it up with Mike Leach afterwards as they discuss their favorite UFO conspiracies. Isn't that the way 2020 rolls? So I'm going to take the plus 200, man, if you're giving me those odds.
Yep.
If you're giving me plus 200 on 2020 carnage, that's a value bet. I got to take the plus 200 and bet on 2020 to come through in the camel clutch yet again.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's good value.
That'll do it for this week's episode of Bigger 10. Don't forget to follow us each day at Bigger 10 on Twitter to keep up to date on what we think about all things Big Ten and more. We are back again next week right here on Bigger 10. Until then, for my co-host Aaron McIntyre, I'm Steve Dace. See you next week.